There are moments in life that shake us, moments where we sit across from someone who once made our heart race and realize they're not choosing us. And in that moment, we feel like something must be broken in us, that if we had been just a little more patient, more sexy, more easygoing, they might have stayed. But that's the lie pain tells us. The truth is, they loved you. They did. They may have been mesmerized by the way you showed up, by the way you believed in them when they didn't believe in themselves, by your laughter, your strength, your softness. You were a mirror of everything good they secretly longed to be, but couldn't yet become. And it overwhelmed them. They loved you, but they couldn't choose you. And that's not because you weren't lovable. It's because they weren't available, not just physically, but emotionally, spiritually, mentally. They couldn't hold what you were offering because they were still fighting demons you didn't create and couldn't heal. They didn't walk away from you. They walked away from the version of themselves they would have had to become in order to meet you where you were. You showed them a new standard, a love that doesn't play games. A love that listens, that stays, that grows. And that kind of love demands something from people. It demands presence, it demands courage, it demands someone to stop hiding and start showing up. Not everyone is ready for that. They weren't confused about your worth. They saw it. That's what scared them. Because when someone has spent their life feeling small, they don't know how to hold something big. So they shrink away from it, not because it's wrong, but because it's too right. It shines too bright. It confronts their shadows. And some people choose to run rather than heal. You did not lose them. They lost themselves in front of you. You just happened to be the place where that became undeniable. And I know it hurts to be the one who was enough and still not chosen. But being chosen is not the same as being loved. Love is a feeling. Being chosen is an action. And love without action is just a whisper in the dark. It never gets to build a life. So what do you do now? You remember who you are. You remember that their inability to choose you is not a reflection of your inadequacy. It is a reflection of their capacity. You don't shrink to make sense of their absence. You expand into the space they left behind, because the one who is meant to stand beside you won't be confused. They won't flinch at the weight of your love. They'll meet you with clarity, with effort, with devotion. They won't just admire the way you love. They'll rise to meet it. So take heart. You were never too much. You were just a lesson too great for someone who wasn't ready to learn. And your person, the one who is ready to choose, will never make you question if you are. They will know, and they will choose you. Every time, there's a painful truth that many of us have to confront at some point in our lives. Love on its own is not always enough. Someone can look you in the eyes, tell you that they love you and mean it, and still not be capable of giving you the relationship you need. It feels confusing, even cruel. How can someone love you and still let you go, still walk away, still not choose to fight for you? Because love is an emotion, but choosing someone day after day is a decision. And not everyone is ready to make that decision. There are people who deeply feel for you, who crave your energy, your presence, the way you make them feel seen and safe. And yet something inside them says, I can't. Not because they don't care, but because where they are in their emotional journey, they simply aren't equipped to show up for love in the way it demands. Readiness is everything. You can't plant a seed in winter and expect it to bloom. And sometimes you meet someone in their emotional winter. Their heart isn't thawed. Their patterns still rule them. Their fears still speak louder than their desires. And even though they might love being around you, even though they might feel alive in your presence, even though part of them imagines what it could be like to build a life with you, they're not ready to build. They're not ready to trust. They're not ready to soften, to step into vulnerability, to put in the daily work that love actually requires. And when someone isn't ready, love can start to feel threatening. They feel pulled toward you and yet pulled away from you at the same time. You become a mirror showing them everything they want, but don't yet feel worthy of. So instead of moving closer, they retreat. Instead of growing, they self-sabotage. Instead of choosing you, they choose comfort. Familiar pain is often easier for people than unfamiliar growth. And that's not your fault. It's easy to make their unreadiness mean something about you, to think you weren't enough. That if you'd been more forgiving, more sexy, more chill, they would have stayed. But that's not how this works. Love doesn't fail because of a lack of chemistry or care. Love fails when one or both people aren't ready to show up fully, to take responsibility for their own wounds, and to create something safe and real. That readiness comes from within. No matter how incredible you are, you can't force someone to be ready. You can't love them into being ready. You can't earn it. It has to be their own choice. There's a difference between someone loving how you make them feel and someone loving you enough to show up and do the work with you. When someone is ready, they don't just love the idea of you, they show up for the reality of you. They embrace the good, the hard, the uncomfortable conversations, the growth, the showing up even when it's not easy. That's what readiness looks like. And until someone is in that place, their love will always fall short, not because it isn't real, but because it isn't rooted. This is where many people get stuck. They hold on, hoping that love will eventually turn into readiness. They wait for the breakthrough. They stay loyal to potential. But what they're really doing is sacrificing their peace on the altar of someone else's delay. You are allowed to want love from someone who is emotionally ready for love. Someone who has done the work to meet you in that space. Someone who doesn't just feel the right feelings, but is ready to act on them with courage and consistency. There's something powerful that happens when you show up in someone's life with love that's clear, grounded, and mature. You become more than just a person. They see you as a standard. Not a fantasy, not a fairy tale, but a real example of how love can actually look when it's healthy, intentional, and rooted in self-worth. But not everyone is prepared to meet that standard. Not because they don't want to, but because they don't yet believe they can. Sometimes people love you because of how you make them feel about themselves. You bring peace. You bring safety. You bring truth. You show them what's possible beyond games, confusion, or toxic cycles. And at first that feels magnetic. But over time, it begins to expose the gap between who they are now and who they'd have to become to meet you at your level. That gap isn't always something they can or want to close, because closing that gap requires real change. And real change is uncomfortable. It's work. It's a journey into the unknown. Some people aren't ready to let go of the parts of themselves that no longer serve them. So instead of rising to meet your standard, they quietly retreat, or they act out, or they push you away. You didn't ask for too much. You simply embodied a version of love that asked them to grow. You represented a higher frequency, a kind of honesty, vulnerability, and commitment that challenged their comfort zone. And for many, especially those who are used to surviving rather than thriving, love like that doesn't feel safe. It feels like pressure. It feels like a mirror being held up to all the places they still need to heal. So while they might admire you, even feel deeply connected to you, the thought of living up to that standard can feel like too much. That's when you hear the confusion. You're amazing, but I'm not ready. You deserve someone better. It's not you, it's me. Those are the words people say when they recognize your value, but feel incapable of matching it. It's not a reflection of your worth. It's a reflection of their internal battle. You were the wake-up call they weren't prepared for. You didn't just make them feel something, you made them see something. And not everyone is ready to see themselves clearly. People often assume that if someone walks away, it means you didn't matter enough. But in reality, you may have mattered too much. You may have represented a turning point in their life, a point where they were confronted with the choice to evolve or stay the same. And some people will always choose familiarity over transformation, even if it means losing someone extraordinary. That isn't a reflection of your shortcomings. It's a reflection of their readiness. You have to understand that being a standard bearer comes with a cost. Sometimes it means being the one they remember but couldn't hold on to. The one who changed them without even trying. The one who left a mark, not because you begged for love, but because you were love. Your presence alone challenged the smallness they were used to. And that kind of love can feel overwhelming to someone who isn't ready to love themselves at that level. So when they couldn't choose you, it wasn't because you failed. It was because you stood so firmly in your truth that it forced them to confront their own. And that's not something everyone is ready to do. You didn't lose them. They lost the chance to become someone better, someone braver, someone capable of loving you the way you deserved. You were not a test. They were simply not ready to pass it. Not everyone is searching for peace, even if they say they are. Sometimes what people claim to want and what they're actually drawn to are two very different things. They may say they want someone kind, honest, emotionally safe, someone just like you. But when they find it, they feel uncomfortable, even restless. And you start to see it, the push-pull, the subtle withdrawal, the need to create drama where there was none. Not because you did something wrong, but because they've spent so long living in chaos, they don't know how to exist without it. You represent calm. You show up with stability, maturity, and love that's steady, not erratic. But for someone who's conditioned to equate love with emotional highs and lows, who grew up in or became addicted to unpredictable relationships, your consistency doesn't register as passion. It registers as unfamiliar. And unfamiliar feels unsafe, even when it's healthy. That's the trap. They may have loved being around you, but what they were really drawn to was how peaceful you made them feel, until that peace started challenging the identity they built around instability. For them, love might have always come with struggle, tension, or even pain. They associate intensity with connection. So when things with you are calm, nurturing, and emotionally present, it doesn't match the pattern they've internalized. It doesn't feel real to them. Not because you aren't real, but because they've never known real to feel like this. When someone is addicted to emotional chaos, they will find ways to create it. They'll start fights over things that don't matter. They'll question your intentions even when you've been nothing but clear. They'll say they're bored. They'll act distant. It's not that they want to lose you, it's that their nervous system is programmed to distrust what feels too easy, too kind, too soft. Because somewhere in their past, love became entangled with pain. And now the absence of pain feels suspicious. You might think if you just love them a little more, if you show them how safe you are, they'll eventually relax into it. But this kind of healing isn't something you can do for someone. You can't prove you're love enough to override someone's fear of peace. You can't fix the part of them that doesn't know how to receive calm without mistaking it for dullness. That's a journey they have to take within themselves. Until then, they'll keep choosing what's familiar over what's good for them. You may have offered something rare, a connection without games, love without drama, honesty without manipulation. And they may have told you how different you are. But different doesn't always mean desirable when someone isn't ready to unlearn their patterns. They might have admired you, even respected you, but if their emotional blueprint says chaos equals love, then peace will always feel like something to run from. And they will. It's heartbreaking to realize that your stability wasn't enough to anchor them, that your love, no matter how real, couldn't calm the storm inside them. But that storm was never yours to calm. You were the light in the middle of it, not the one responsible for ending it. And in many ways, your presence may have been the beginning of their awakening. Maybe one day they'll look back and realize you were the first taste of something healthy, something whole. But they had to walk away because they weren't ready to let go of the chaos they mistook for connection. Sometimes people don't choose you not because you weren't love, but because you were too much peace for someone still at war within themselves. When someone doesn't love themselves, they will struggle to accept love from anyone else. No matter how pure, genuine, or consistent it is, you could be everything they've ever needed: kind, supportive, forgiving, patient. And still, they'll find ways to reject you. Not because they don't care, but because something deep inside tells them they're not worthy of being cared for. Their internal dialogue is too loud, too critical, too full of shame to allow your love to land. Instead of receiving it, they question it. Instead of embracing it, they push it away. It's a heartbreaking dynamic because you can see their potential. You can see the goodness in them, the parts of them they hide even from themselves. And maybe, for a while, they let you in. Maybe they allowed themselves to feel the warmth of your love, the safety of your presence. But that warmth becomes too much when someone is cold on the inside. Love starts to feel like pressure. It becomes a mirror reflecting all the things they haven't healed. And that kind of reflection can be too painful to face. They sabotage the connection not out of cruelty, but out of self-protection. Because if they allow themselves to believe that you love them, then they have to confront the terrifying possibility that they're lovable. And for someone who's spent their life believing they're broken, flawed, or never enough, that belief feels impossible. So they find ways to make your love stop. They pick fights, they pull away, they ghost. Or they go silent, not because they want to hurt you, but because they're convinced they'll hurt you eventually, and they'd rather control the ending than face rejection they think is inevitable. You begin to wonder if there was something you could have done differently. Could you have reassured them more? Could you have been even more patient? But when someone is at war with themselves, your love becomes just another battlefield. You're fighting for them while they're fighting against themselves. And no matter how much you pour into them, they have a leak that only they can repair. It's not your job to convince someone that they're worthy of love. It's their job to believe it. People who don't love themselves often misinterpret healthy love. They confuse your kindness for manipulation, your patience for pity, your forgiveness for weakness, because they're looking at you through the lens of their own unworthiness, and nothing you do can clear that lens. That's their work. That's their healing. You can offer love, but they have to be open to receiving it. And if they aren't, it won't matter how perfect you are for them. They'll still find a way to run. Sometimes the most tragic part of love is realizing that it isn't enough to save someone from themselves. You can be their best moment, their safest place, their greatest connection, and still they'll walk away because they don't know how to stay with someone who sees them as whole when all they see in themselves is brokenness. Your love makes them feel exposed, vulnerable, seen in a way they're not ready to be seen. And for someone who's built armor around their heart, your love becomes a threat to the story they've told themselves for years, that they're unlovable or that good things don't last. You weren't wrong for loving them. In fact, your love may have been the most honest thing they've ever experienced. But loving someone who doesn't love themselves is like offering a feast to someone who believes they don't deserve to eat. You watch them starve in front of you, refusing what could nourish them because they can't reconcile the love you offer with the identity they've clung to. You try to love them whole, but they have to choose healing. They have to choose to believe they are worth it. Until then, they'll keep running from love, not because it's wrong, but because it feels too right, too unfamiliar. Too pure for a heart that hasn't learned to feel safe in its own skin. Some people are not meant to stay. As hard as it is to accept, they enter your life with a divine purpose. Not to be your forever, but to awaken something in you that changes everything. They don't always come wrapped in red flags or obvious warning signs. In fact, they often arrive as exactly what you thought you were waiting for. The connection is real. The chemistry is magnetic. The conversations are deep and your soul feels seen in a way it hasn't before. But even with all that, they still leave. They still choose something or someone else. And you're left wondering what it all meant. But there was meaning. Just not the kind you were hoping for. Their role wasn't to build a life with you. It was to break something open in you. Maybe it was to reveal what you truly value. Maybe it was to show you what you will no longer tolerate. Maybe it was to teach you how to finally choose yourself after a lifetime of choosing people who couldn't or wouldn't choose you. It doesn't lessen the pain, but it gives the pain purpose. We don't always recognize our teachers when they arrive, because teachers don't always look like mentors. Sometimes they come as lovers, as soul connections, as people who speak to the most sacred parts of us. They arrive carrying pieces of what we've always wanted, and that's what makes their exit feel like such a loss. But the truth is, they weren't here to complete your story. They were here to redirect it. They were here to wake you up to the kind of love you are truly worthy of. Even if they couldn't give it to you themselves, it's tempting to dwell on the moments you shared, to replay what you could have done differently. But often, the relationship unfolded exactly the way it was meant to. The timing, the intensity, the confusion, it all served a higher function. You didn't fail. The relationship didn't fail. It completed its purpose. It brought you back to yourself. It showed you where you still needed healing. It brought to light the parts of you that were still settling for less while craving more. That's not a loss. That's a sacred initiation. Some people come into your life like a flame, bright, hot, impossible to ignore, but they're not meant to keep burning with you. They burn to light a path. And sometimes in the ashes of what could have been, you find clarity about what should be. You begin to understand that their inability to choose you wasn't rejection. It was protection. You were being spared from walking further down a path with someone who wasn't emotionally equipped to walk beside you. You'll notice something beautiful too when you look back, how you started showing up differently after them, how you started honoring your own needs, how your standards rose, how your boundaries became more loving and firm. That's not an accident. That's transformation. And it didn't come from someone who stayed. It came from someone who left. You don't need to hate them. You don't need to idolize them either. You can hold both truths. They were important and they weren't meant to stay. They were a chapter, not the whole story. And their exit made space for something greater. Not just someone greater, but a greater version of you. The one who no longer begs to be chosen. The one who knows that love is not about clinging, it's about aligning. The one who is now ready to receive love that's not just powerful, but peaceful. Not just passionate, but committed. Love that doesn't teach lessons through pain, but grows roots through presence. And you wouldn't have recognized that love if you hadn't been brought through the lesson first. So here's what I want you to remember as you walk away from this moment, carrying the weight of love that almost was. They did love you, but they didn't choose you. Not because you lacked anything, but because they lacked readiness, healing, and the courage to meet the depth of what you were offering. You were not too much. You were simply too aligned with a version of love they hadn't grown into. You became a mirror of strength, stability, peace, and worth. And not everyone is ready to see their reflection that clearly. They walked away not from you, but from the version of themselves they would have had to become to stand beside you. And that is not your burden to carry. You deserve someone who doesn't just love you in theory, but chooses you in action. Someone who isn't intimidated by your light, but inspired by it. Someone who doesn't run from emotional maturity, but runs toward it. The kind of love you're looking for is not something you'll ever have to convince someone to give. When it's right, you won't have to fight for clarity. You won't have to beg for consistency. You won't have to shrink, question, or chase. Because love that is meant for you will stand with you. So let go of what was not yours to hold on to. Bless it for the role it played and step boldly toward the love that is coming. The love that sees you, chooses you, and stays. Thank you for allowing me to walk with you through this truth. It takes courage to listen and even more courage to live it. Wherever you are on your journey, I hope you never forget your value. Keep your heart open, your standards high, and your soul grounded in the love you know you deserve. Until next time, take care of yourself. You are loved, you are seen, and your story is far from over. Thank you.